let me start with flow. So flow is optimal performance. And one of the things optimizes is learning and memory. In studies run by the Department of Defense, soldiers in flow will learn 240 to 500% faster than normal. So
Crazy.
huge boost in learning and memory in flow. And Erickson and I used to talk about this, that flow amounts a very crude challenge to 10,000 hours to mastery, because flow seems to massively accelerate that path. Flow states have triggers. So you want more flow in your life, right? You want the performance benefits of the state. These triggers are your toolkit. The most important is probably very familiar to you. It's known as the challenge skills balance. We pay the most attention to the task at hand when the challenge of our task slightly exceeds our skill set. And attention is the game with flow. Flow follows focus, shows up when all our attention is the right here, right now. Neurobiologically, it does it through driving dopamine and norepinephrine into our system, a bunch of other things. But the point is, without focus on the present moment, you can't get into flow. And the best way to focus on the present moment is when the challenge of the present, the task at hand, slightly exceeds our skill set. So you want to stretch but not snap. This is the Erks-Dobson curve.
That's a good line. To stretch but not snap. Applies physically.
Years ago, Csikszentmihalyi put a number on this. He sat down with a Google mathematician and said, "Can we put a number on this for the average person, the average situation?" And they came up with 4%. Meaning we pay the most attention to the task at hand when the challenge is about 4% greater than our skills. Now, that was a metaphor. It wasn't science. It was a metaphor. They did a back of the envelope calculation. We took the calculation at the Flow Research Collective. We hammered on it for about 6 years, trying to test it. I never felt like, so I still don't think this is science, but it's one of the most damn accurate metaphors to steer by I've ever encountered. Right? I can't tell you it's science. I really can't, but it works.
I mean, that's tremendous. It's amazing when you have, with kids and stuff, just watching, I've got three kids. You watch the youngest kid watching the middle kid and the oldest kid, and how fast the youngest kid learns compared to your first child who didn't have anybody to look at. And all of a sudden the youngest is learning how to use the scooter or skateboard 3 years ahead of the one that came first.
It's amazing, right?
And you think that as we age, we lose a little bit of that, but it sounds like if we put ourselves in the right environment, we could still explore that.
Yeah, two things that are worth pointing out. This goes back to play, dynamic play, and or dynamic motion and play. So two things that are worth knowing. This is really cool. One, dynamic motion isn't just great for your body. It's the only kind of physical activity that does this, but it amplifies neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons. So when your brain has to coordinate like balance and strength and agility and all that stuff together, you actually get new neurons. Nothing else does this in exercise. When they talk about exercise being neuroprotective, this is why. But it's not all exercises created equal. You can run on a treadmill. It's going to be good for your heart. It's not good for your brain. It's not doing anything for your brain. But so we're getting new neurogenesis. Even better, we've all heard about the motor learning window that slams shut when you're 25, right? Don't become a ballerina after 18. Don't learn gymnastics. Right. So it turns out, like everything else we've been told, partially true. There's a motor learning window, and it does close in and around when the prefrontal cortex reaches maturity. And there is stuff with language in certain facilities that do appear. They're gone. I don't think they're gone forever, because I think we just haven't figured out how to turn a couple of these things back on. But as a general, that window turns out to be much more plastic than we ever imagined. And what actually changes is not our ability to learn. It's how we learn. Kids learn through play. Adults get fucking serious. And when you get freaking serious, shame goes up, embarrassment goes up, self-consciousness goes up, conscious processing of information goes up. And as you know, like all good motor learning, it's unconscious. These are unconscious things. We can't, you can't think fast enough to surf a wave. It has to be unconscious, right? So what changes is not the motor learning window. It's how we learn is what radically shifts. And if we go back to a very playful style of learning, especially with dynamic motion, because it's birthing new neurons, the combination, provided we get a good night's sleep afterwards, means we get to learn difficult, if not impossible, skills later in life, which is really freaking cool.
Yeah, it's amazing what the body and brain can do. And like you say, what we've the limits we thought we had, that we can actually continue to push and continue to, as we're seeing performances extended now well into the 40s, into the 50s, into the 60s.
Well, I mean, where a lot of so the story about VO2 max. This was the thing. It didn't matter what you said about peak performance aging. Somebody would beat you over the head with VO2 max. It starts declining in our 20s. It falls off a cliff at 50 and shut the up, right? Like that was every physiologist you talked to forever. And then that weird thing started happening in ultra marathoning. They started to notice the 60 and 70-year-olds were beating the 40 and 50-year-olds consistently. And somebody was like, well, how the hell is that happening? And they went and they measured the VO2 max of octogenarian triathletes and ultra runners. And they found that it's the VO2 max of healthy 25 and 35-year-olds. Like that's what, right? So the world record is a dude who's I want to say he's 81. He's got the VO2 max of a 25-year-old. That's the best they've found so far. Yeah. But it wasn't like they were dealing with supermen and superwomen. It was people who started training regularly in their 50s. It was the 3 decades of upper respiratory training that does this.